These are courtesy of Fan Duel. Okay. I'm going to bring this up. Friends at, there you go. Our friends at Heartland College Sports went through and put all this together because Fan Duel does not really neatly pull all of this together. So they've done it. You can see it here. You can see it here, people. Here are the win totals according to Fan Duel Sportsbook for 2025 in the Big 12. Arizona State, K-State, Texas Tech, all 8.5. And by the way, win totals here, regular season. Okay, regular season. So don't freak out too much here. Highest that I saw on the board was 10.5. Okay, right? Regular season win totals. 8.5 for K-State, Arizona State, Texas Tech. You've got a group of 5 teams sitting there: Baylor, BYU, Iowa State, Kansas, Utah, that are all at 7.5. So, I mean, between that, 8 teams separated by 1 game at the top of the league, like the entire top half of the league standings. Colorado, more on them in a moment, really the only one outside of that group that I would have expected would be kind of in that top tier of teams. Otherwise, it looks pretty status quo to me as far as like just the who actually is in there. But I have a lot of thoughts here. One, the Holy War is pretty nuts here, but I'm going to wait to get to that. As far as where we're at with the favorites, okay? Arizona State, K-State, Texas Tech. Mildly surprising there, right? I will say this. Arizona State is not a surprise, okay? We'll get that out of the way, right? They won the league last year. Makes perfect sense. They have a returning quarterback in Sam Levitt. They actually, Bill Connolly from ESPN just released the returning production for 2025, which I can imagine, by the way, Bill, how much of a chore that must be in college football these days with the portal and having to wait through all that and then tally like return. It seems like a nightmare. Anyway, Arizona State is second in the country in returning production. Clemson is number 1. So if you're looking for somebody to potentially be bullish on in the ACC, it might be Clemson there. Now, I'd imagine that they're going to be the ACC favorite, but Clemson has a ton coming back. Arizona State just behind. So, yes, Cam Scadaboo is not going to be a part of it. That is a big loss. He was the heart and soul of the team and basically a Heisman finalist, finishing 5th. It should have been a Heisman finalist. Insane player, incredible player. That's a tough loss. But they've got 70+% returning production back on both offense and defense. Number 2 in the country. ASU is going to be good. Kenny Dillingham, I think we all feel like, is a pretty good coach. That's going to be a pretty good. I stop myself from saying safe bet, people, because it's the Big 12. I don't feel like anything is a safe bet, to be honest, in the Big 12, especially after what we saw last year. But as close to it as you would get, I would say this offseason in the Big 12, based on the returning production, the coach, and quarterback returning at Arizona State. Now, Texas Tech is interesting because they did not get as much love in the way too early top 25s that we saw. They were included in a couple, but they were not like a standard, hey, we're putting Texas Tech in the top 25. And it is surprising to me just because like they have so much talent and it was such in the portal, they acquired so much talent and it was such a sexy story for everybody to be talking about because we love the portal. I mean, that's completely replaced high school recruiting in college football. It's more palatable for people, right? It's a talent acquisition source that is more palatable for people because it makes more sense. Like, hey, I've seen that guy play before. You know, before you would have a crowd that would just say like, well, I don't get into recruiting. I've heard this from many people. Like, I don't get into recruiting because it's just all these kids. I don't know how good they are. I've never heard of them. Well, okay. Now these are guys that you've heard of, or at least you can go look at like film of them playing. You can go watch games where they played college football. It's easier for people to get into. So there's more interest around it. And because of all of that, I would just think that there would have been more of a push to be like, hey, man, Texas Tech dominated the portal. We love talking about talent. We spent a large part of the college football entire ethos, spent a large part of the season talking about how the SEC needed to get more teams in because of all the talent they have. We love ranking the talent. Texas Tech did it where it counts. Transfer portal talent, but they weren't a slam dunk contribution there. I think there are a couple slam dunk inclusion there in those top 25s. I think there are a couple reasons. I mean, I think honestly, a lot of it, and Tech fans, close your ears, but it's what I've said for a while. Ever since I picked Tech to win the league and they disappointed a couple of years ago, I've just said, look, I got to see it to believe it. It's been too long. It's been too long since Tech has done that. That number 8.5, it's been too long. Mike Leach still in Lubbock, rest in power. Mike Leach still in Lubbock the last time that happened in a regular season. So I think that's a lot of people are just still kind of in wait and see mode because of that. But man, the sports books definitely love, I mean, they have their formulas. They love seeing the talent. And I think you're seeing that reflected here in the fact that Texas Tech is in that top 3. By the way, Tech is top 5 in returning production across the country next year. They are number 1 in returning production defensively in the country next year. So that helps. That does help. Texas Tech 4th, by the way, if you're looking for a specific there. I'm also, to be honest, I'm a little pleasantly surprised, I guess, at K-State being there. Pleasantly in like, hey, I appreciate the respect for the program, but also as a K-State fan, I'm kind of like, I don't know, this year, could the expectations just be a little bit lower? You know, it's been back-to-back years with really sky-high expectations and then slightly disappointing seasons. But I guess it's just a lot of respect for Chris Kleiman and the upside then of the roster with Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards. Like, again, no names in college football that people feel like I think have really high upsides. I'm sure that's a lot of it there. But I don't know. If you're talking to me, Iowa State being below K-State there, I would disagree with at this point in time. I would disagree with. Matt Campbell proved me wrong last year. He got up over that glass ceiling. He shattered through it. Won 11 games last year. He's gotten the better of Chris Kleiman more often than not. And I don't like K-State going to Ireland to play that game at the beginning of the year with a new offensive coordinator, new offensive line coach, breaking in 3 or 4 new offensive linemen in that game. I don't know. That scares me. We'll see. Iowa State's, look, they lost some studs, certainly on the offensive side of the ball with those 2 receivers. But I don't know. That one mildly surprised me. Crazy. Notice the difference between Oklahoma State and Utah. I'm going to say that, and then I'll pop back into the screen here for you. But notice the difference between Oklahoma State and Utah. Both teams that were in very, very similar positions last year. Heavy favorites to be toward the top of the league, and then totally bombed. And Oklahoma State gets 5.5, tied for last in the Big 12 in terms of teams that are on the board. West Virginia not on the board, but tied for last. And then Utah finds itself squarely in that top 8 with a 7.5 total there. Interesting how differently they are being treated. Okay. Now, my theory on this would be that it's probably about as simple as what's going on at quarterback. I mean, it is for me when I started thinking about this. Okay, like I've been really high on Utah. Why is that as opposed to Oklahoma State? And some of it might just be I've been a little closer to the Mike Gundy situation over the last few years than just Utah. Going back 2 years ago to when people felt like Gundy was starting to fall off based on what was happening with the portal and NIL and losing a bunch of the roster. But I think it's the next step was I was like, well, wait, who the hell is playing quarterback for Oklahoma State next year? I know about Devin Dampier, New Mexico transfers, who I think has a really high upside at Utah. I don't know what's going on at Oklahoma State. And I find out that it's a 4-way quarterback battle between Zane Flores, Haas Henne, Garrett Rangel, and oh boy, I'm going to botch it. I'm sorry. Malukai Smith at Oklahoma State. Hit me. You can bury me in the comments. That's fine. I know that's a mispronunciation. I'm usually the guy that wants to make sure I have the pronunciations. I don't for these, but none of that felt good. I mean, Haas didn't even throw a pass at TCU, played in a couple games, but they just used his legs. Zane Flores hasn't done anything at Oklahoma State. Smith had one great start, one horrible start at the end of the year for Oklahoma State. Garrett Rangel seems okay. I'm not sure about the ceiling there with him. So that's probably it. Like, I don't know what, Oklahoma State's got Doug Meacham. We'll see what he can whip up as a new offensive coordinator, but interesting the respect level there for Utah as opposed to Oklahoma State. And then Colorado. Boy, this is going to spark the Colorado debate again, right? This will definitely spark the Colorado debate. So Colorado, 6.5, tied for ninth in the Big 12. They are only above 3 teams. I guess you could say 4. Only above 4 teams in the Big 12 in their over-under win total, according to the sports books. Colorado still has a lot of talent. They still have a pretty good portal. They are bringing in 2 very talented, high-profile quarterbacks, but I think this speaks a lot to what I had said about, I think, look, Travis Hunter, worthy Heisman recipient, but the tougher guy to replace on that roster by far is going to be Shedeur Sanders. He was so good. I think Shedeur Sanders was really good and didn't get enough credit even from a lot of people for how good he actually was. So that will set Colorado back for sure. At least beginning of the year might be tough getting acclimated to what this team is going to be without a Shedeur Sanders there. So from that standpoint, I can understand it. I figured the books might still be a little bit higher on them because of the talent composite, the talent component that's in play here. When I say talent composite, you go look at 24/7 Sports talent composite, who Colorado has. I don't know. They're probably going to get a bunch of, that's probably going to get slammed, right? Like that number's got to be getting crushed right now. I would think that, John Q. Public is going to go see what, all I got to have is Colorado win 7 regular season games to hit the over on that. Like I'm going to go run to the window for that. And I get Dion working with either Julian Lewis or Caden Slater, whoever's going to win the quarterback job. Give me that. I think you'll see a ton of that. Okay, we're going to talk Holy War in just a moment.